It's 1815, and Napoleon has been defeated. After the borders have been redrawn again at the Vienna settlement, their Austria was to be given Lombardy and Venetia, and control over most of northern Italy, except for Sardinia, which was entirely independent. While the victors of the Napoleonic Wars could redraw borders, they couldn't destroy the liberal ideas brought by the French. And in 1840s the revolution spread around Europe, and importantly to Austria, which weakened its grip over Italy. And this led to uprisings in Milan and Venice, and the Italian tricolor started to be used. After King Charles Albert crossed the border, he marched his army into Austrian land. But the Austrians, led by Marshal Joseph Radetzky, beat back the Italians and defeated them at the Battle of Custoza. And Charles Albert was forced to sign an armistice. In the rest of Italy, the revolutions were continuing, and in Rome, the Pope was forced to flee, and the creation of the Roman Republic by Giuseppe Mazzini in 1849. But the French would destroy the Republic and the Pope reinstated by not yet Emperor Napoleon III. In Sardinia, Piedmont, Charles Albert had restarted the war with Austria again. The war went well terribly for the Sardinians, and after many defeats Charles Albert abdicated, and was scudded by Victor Emmanuel II, who had to deal with a peace treaty, and paying heavily for it. But Piedmont Sardinia had a new flag and a fancy new constitution, which gave him great power but difficult relation with his prime minister, who was at that time Camillo di Cavour, who wanted to model Sardinia after Britain. Speaking of Britain, they and the French were in the Crimean War, which Piedmont sent soldiers to assist them in hopes that one of them will help. At the peace negotiations, Sardinia wanted to kick Austria out of Italy. Britain wanted nothing to do with it. But Napoleon III, now emperor, would agree if Sardinia stayed under French guidance, and the Papal States remained unharmed. And so, in 1859, an uprising was staged in Modena, which Piedmont quickly came to the aid of. But Austrians would also intervene and almost capture the capital of Piedmont before the French had arrived. After that, the French would win the Battle of Magenta and the Battle of Solferino, which was a combined victory against the Austrian. After that, Piedmont would revive Lombardy. Also, at that time, the other Italian states formed the United Provinces of Central Italy, and also Piedmont giving Savoy and Nice to France. But the United Provinces of Italy, which took land from the Papal States, and then asked for a union with Piedmont. And in the end, nobody was happy. So in 1859, a uprising kicked off in Sicily, and Garibaldi saw this opportunity and set the expedition of the 1000 in 1860. And only with 1,000 men Garibaldi conquered Sicily. Then he crossed over to Naples against the orders of Cavour, again the prime minister. But by that point Garibaldi and his volunteers had successfully conquered the entire kingdom and were ready to attack the Papal States, which Cavour opposed, not eating him to gain too much power, so the Piedmontese invaded first. And in October Garibaldi met with Victor Emmanuel II and headed over his conquest to him. And in 1861 King Victor Emmanuel II became the first king of Italy. And those in the south had to pay debts from it. Was furthermore, the Pope didn't like the government, understandably. And even that, Italy still haven't got neither Venice or Rome. But in 1866, Italy saw an opportunity as between Prussia and Austria broke war, more known as the Brothers' War. So Italy was in, but its participation in the war was poor. But Prussia won, and Austria, strangely enough, gave Venice to France rather to Italy, believing that Italy didn't deserve it. But later on France gave it back to Italy, making the whole thing a waste of time. 4 years later, a new war broke out, the Franco-Prussian War, and Napoleon III had moved out his troops from the Papal States. And when France was busy fighting the Prussians, Italy conquests the Papal States. After that, in 1817, the new capital of Italy would become Rome. Italy would become a great power and would get involved itself into European politics for the better or for the worse. And if you're wondering what happened to the popes, well, they were left with the smallest city country on earth.